Story 1. My ex DM'd me because I was a softie and now she wants me back. I, 27 male, had previously been in a toxic relationship with my ex-girlfriend, who we will call RR, and I had nothing in common, which to this day makes me question why we even dated in the first place. We started dating after we'd been hanging out with the same friend group when we were both 20. She was the one who asked me out first, which I agreed since I liked her a bit. We started dating for 4 months, then made it official that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. After a year, she started getting annoyed with everything I do. She would go crazy if she saw me baking or knitting. I loved doing this stuff because my mother taught me those things since I was a child. I was the shy type who didn't like talking a lot or doing what other boys do these days. I can describe myself as a calm person, but she didn't like that. She hated who I was. She would constantly scream at me to be a man and stop acting like a woman. To be honest, it hurt a lot, especially when my self-esteem was really low. Day after day, it started getting worse. When her birthday came, I baked a cake especially for her. Since I knew that she loved cheesecake, guess what she did? She was livid and screamed at the top of her lungs about how I was a pussy, and threw the cake I made her. She went to her friend's house that night while I cried myself to sleep. The last straw came when I adopted my cat Nina. She was a small kitten when I adopted her. I loved her the moment I laid my eyes on her, so I decided to take her home with me. When R saw her, she almost lost her mind and started screeching about how disgusting it was to have a cat. She tried to take Nina, but I pushed her away and finally snapped. I told her how I had had enough of her and I wouldn't let her bring me down anymore. I wouldn't change who I was for someone who doesn't even appreciate me. It was a huge argument, and I told her to get the fuck out of my apartment because it's over and I wouldn't let anyone disrespect me this way again. She started packing her things while telling me that she doesn't need me and will find herself a real man. 2 years passed and I met my now wife. She was the complete opposite of us. Adorable, calm, sweet, loving, a literal angel. I met her because I constantly saw her whenever I brought Nina to the vet. It turned out that she was there because her father worked as a vet. She came to visit him and play with other pets. It was so adorable, and I found myself developing feelings for her. We started talking, and I discovered that we share almost the same interests, like we were made for each other. We talked more and I built up the courage to ask her out. The date was perfect. We talked and laughed, laid down chatting all night. I told her about my story with my ex, which comforted me and told me that she doesn't know what she lost, that I was a wonderful and a sweet man that lacks nothing. I started tearing up and she hugged me. She was so sweet to me and loved playing with Nina. Every time I looked at her, I thought to myself, yes, this is the woman I want to marry. After a few dates, we became official and I couldn't be happier. We got married and I felt like I was on cloud 9. Fast forward to last year, I got a knock on my door, which to my surprise, it was my ex who made me miserable. I tried closing the door, but she said it was a different thing. It turns out one of my friends gave her my address. Don't worry, I already cut off that friend. Anyways, R started apologizing, and I could see the color drain from her face when she saw my wedding ring on my finger. Suddenly, she broke down and said how much she missed me. She wanted us to get back together, which disgusted me. She continued crying about how her past relationships were toxic and her exes treated her like SHT. Well, I treated her like a queen. I told her heck no, I wouldn't leave the woman who loved me for who I am and made me happy to someone who never gave it SHT about my feelings. I told her to get lost or I'll get a restraining order and then closed the door that day. I told my wife everything. She was so happy for me that I stood up for myself and told my ex how much pain she caused me. This was last year. Now we have a beautiful daughter together. I'm glad I met such a sweet woman who made me happy and started a family with me. But I'm mostly happy that in the end, I knew my worth. Now for the top of comments before reading the update. Congrats op. You put your happiness first and overcame adversity. I hope you have a great marriage with that great girl who won your love. I wish you good luck. Yours is such an uplifting story. You did everything without betraying your principles, and now you have a beautiful family. Yep, and I'm grateful for it. It's crazy to me that she thought you would want her back. She sounds vile, and the way things ended between you two, even if you were single, she wouldn't have a chance. I'm glad you learned your value, and never let anyone treat you like that again. Yeah, even if she was the last woman on earth, I would never get back with her. Story 2. My stepmom thinks my dad and I are in love. My dad, 50 male, and my mom, 45 female, got divorced when I, 21 female, was in the first grade. My sister, an 18-year-old female, and I have been doing fine between houses since then. A few years ago, my dad met my stepmom, 50 female, and it was amazing seeing him so happy that he finally met someone who loved him as much as he loved her. They got married 3 years ago, and ever since then, she's acted differently to me. My dad and I used to do everything together. He'd take me to his work, and we'd have dad-daughter dates. He took my sister and I on family trips with just the 3 of us. My stepmom threw away everything that resembled my mom when she moved in. My jacket that had my dad's company and my mom's name was thrown away. Pictures from my parents' wedding went missing. She starts crying and screaming when we talk about life before she came into the picture. Now she just accuses me and my dad of having a sexual relationship, which is not true whatsoever. He's not allowed to be home alone with me. We aren't allowed to go hang out together without her. I was wearing my snow gear, we live in Minnesota so it's pretty cold, and she accused my dad of looking at me sexually. I was in giant snow pants and a huge coat. Heaven forbid I sit on the same couch with him. I was happy that he found someone who loved him, but I feel as if I'm being pushed further away from him. I try to be nice to her because her own kids barely talk to her anymore, but I'm finding it really difficult. I cry every time I visit because those two just end up in a fight about me while I'm here. I know he doesn't want to start over, but is staying with her worth losing a relationship with your own daughter? Edit. I want to add that my stepmom and I had a good relationship before they got married. We went shopping, exercising, and much more together like we were best friends. The issue started when my grandma, mom's mom, passed away a year and a half ago, and mom moved in with my grandpa, who happens to live 5 minutes away from my dad. I'm told that I look like my mom all the time, so could it be because she's threatened by my mom somehow? Even though both of my parents have said that even if they were the last 2 people on the planet, they'd rather die than repopulate with each other. Edit 2. Hi everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for your support. I read each comment, and I try to respond to the ones that people have a lot of questions about. I also wanted to say that I have received many hateful DMs and comments saying I'm a troll and fake. I just want to say that my story is completely true. Others have experienced a similar situation based on mine. It's hurtful to think that people think that this is fake, but I can understand that this is a screwed up situation. I wouldn't wish this situation on my worst enemies. Edit 3. I just wanted to answer a few questions I've been receiving. 1. Her boys 27, 25, and 22 had some communication, but not a lot. The 2 eldest came over about once a month and for the holidays. The youngest hasn't been back for about a year. They all still contact my sister, myself, and my dad regularly. 2. My dad has tried to go to therapy with her, but it never works out from what I hear. He's had his heart broken by my mom really bad apparently, and had a hard time getting back out there to date. He really wants this to work out with my stepmom, and takes his vows for better or for worse in sickness and in health seriously. He wants to help her. 3. The photo albums and items that belong to my mom he was saving for my sister and I when we got older. For example, my mom and dad kept their wedding rings, and the day my sister and I both graduated we got a new piece of jewelry formed out of both rings that they melted and put together. He didn't look through them, they were in a box in a basement labeled, for the girls when older. 4. I'm not trying to make excuses for my dad's behavior because it's annoying and I wish it would stop. To be called horrible names and treated like a burden hurts so much. Hopefully I can answer your questions. My dad's birthday is coming up, and I plan on giving him an album of old photos of his past that don't include my mom so he can look through a few pictures of my sister and I when we were younger. But I don't know how it's going to go at this point. Now for the advices. I'm so sorry you have to go through this, but I think you really need to tell your dad your feelings on this. You should be his priority, not your stepmom. It might also help telling your mom about her as well and trying to get her to help you speak to him alone. I told my dad that my stepmother was pushing his first children out to provide for her children. He didn't believe me and ratted me out to her. She played the heartbroken, trying mom for a while until she managed to push us all away from dad. It was always her plan to push the old kids out to make room for her kids. Pretty genius way to drive a father and daughter apart though. It's so absurd there's no rationale discussing it. I wonder why her own children stopped talking to her. I hope your father can see how ridiculous her accusations are and just put a stop to her controlling issues without arguing about it. As soon as you start with any arguments, you have to argue with someone that just doesn't see reality. I would also go for the I'm worried about stepmom and think she needs to get herself checked by a doctor route. Pretty genius way to drive a father and daughter apart. The one way you can make showing genuine paternal love and affection look bad and feel like something unwanted, and people wonder why incest is taboo. It screws up healthy family relationships for those who aren't incestuous. The stepmom is probably suffering from the Cinderella effect. There's a reason evil stepmother is a trope.